This story is called My Brother Said You Have No Wife, No Kids, No Life at Christmas, while he was stealing my money and my family. Sided with him, but 3 days later, they begged me after I made them lose everything. Before we dive into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel has been losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's fast, free, and it helps us continue bringing you great content. Your support truly means the world to us. Let's keep growing this channel together. Thank you so much. Now let's get started. I never expected to be posting here, but after everything that's happened, I really need to share this. It's going to be a long one, and honestly, writing it down might help me process everything. I'm 33 years old, a man, and I grew up extremely poor. Not the can't afford the latest iPhone kind of poor, but actual poverty. The kind where you eat toast for dinner and pretend it's a regular meal. The kind where you learn early on how to avoid the landlord at the start of each month because your mom needs a few extra days to get paid. That's the kind of poor I'm talking about. My mom had 2 jobs. She worked at a convenience store in the mornings and cleaned offices at night. My dad was a mechanic, but not the legit kind with a real shop. He fixed cars in our backyard for cash. He'd always say next month he'd get his certification. Next month he'd open a proper garage. But that next month never came. My brother Jake and I shared a tiny room in our 2-bedroom house. It wasn't even a room, really. We just shared a mattress on the floor until I was 15. Jake's 2 years older than me, and he hated every second of it. He used to draw a line down the middle of the mattress with a permanent marker, telling me I better not cross it. Mom would get mad about the marker, but we couldn't afford a new mattress, so we'd just flip it over. I started working as soon as I could, literally on my 14th birthday. I was at McDonald's filling out applications. I worked every summer and every weekend I could. School wasn't easy. Our district was bad, with teachers who'd given up and textbooks from the 90s, but I still studied. The library became my second home because we couldn't afford the internet at our house. I made it into community college while working full-time at a warehouse doing night shifts, loading trucks. My hands would shake from exhaustion during morning classes, but I kept going. I taught myself coding on an old computer at the library, got my first IT certification, and that's when things with my family started getting strange. Everyone had something to say. "Look who thinks he's too good for us now," they'd say. "Since when do you need a computer?" Real work is with your hands. Jake especially hated it, saying I was trying to be someone I wasn't. Then I landed my first real tech job, help desk work, nothing fancy, but it paid more than both of my parents made combined. The first thing I did was get Mom to a dentist. She'd been dealing with a bad tooth for years, but could only afford aspirin for the pain. I helped with bills too, and even started paying rent on time. That's when Jake and his wife, Sarah, started acting differently. Suddenly, they needed help with everything. Their car broke down, even though Jake was supposed to be a great mechanic like Dad. Their kid needed new school clothes, their fridge died, and every week there was some new emergency. The big one came when they wanted to buy a house. They couldn't get approved on their own due to bad credit and Jake's irregular income from fixing cars. Sarah was working part-time at a daycare. They asked me to co-sign the loan. Looking back, I should have said no, but you know how family is. You want to help. So, I co-signed and even helped with the down payment since they had never saved anything. At first, they acted grateful, but then the comments started. Every family dinner became this strange mix of asking for money while also putting me down. "Remember when you used to wear my hand-me-downs?" Jake would say, right after asking if I could lend him money until next month. "Must be nice to have all that money while we struggle," Sarah would say, while wearing clothes they couldn't afford. It got worse when I got promoted. I started doing software development, making good money, and bought myself a decent car. Not fancy, just reliable. You'd think I had bought a Ferrari the way they reacted. Some people forgot where they came from. They'd say, "Must be nice to waste money while your family struggles." The thing is, I never forgot where I came from. How could I? I was still helping them every month, still paying for things when they came up short, still fixing their computer problems and helping Jake with his business, which was just him fixing cars in his driveway just like Dad. But in their eyes, me doing better meant I had betrayed them. They thought I was saying I was better than them just because I got out of poverty. But that's not what it was. I just wanted something different, something better. I wanted to break the cycle that had trapped us for generations. Dad used to say, "Know your place," and I think he meant it as a warning, like don't get your hopes up. But I took it differently. I knew my place wasn't where I started. It just took me a while to understand that changing your place doesn't mean forgetting where you began. 2 years ago, I met Rachel at a tech conference in Seattle. I almost didn't go because Jake and Sarah needed money for their kids' school supplies that week, and conferences aren't cheap. But my boss and sister said the company would cover everything. Rachel was giving a presentation on database security, way smarter than me. We talked during lunch, and it turned out she grew up like me. Her dad worked in construction, her mom cleaned houses, and she did community college and worked her way up. For the first time, I met someone who really understood. We started dating, and my family had opinions. Sarah especially. Before she even met Rachel, she was telling everyone that I was dating a rich girl who thought she was better than us. Rachel isn't rich. She makes good money now, but she's still paying off student loans. I waited almost 6 months before bringing Rachel to meet the family. I wanted to be sure it was serious first. I should have waited longer, though. It was at my parents' house on a regular Sunday dinner. Rachel brought a homemade apple pie because she knew my mom loved them, and she spent all day making it. But as soon as we walked in, you could feel how cold the atmosphere was. Sarah wouldn't even look at Rachel, just talked about her like she wasn't there. "So, this is the one who thinks she's too good to shop at Walmart," Sarah said, even though Rachel had never mentioned Walmart. My mom tried to be nice, but she was uncomfortable, and Dad just sat there quietly, which was even worse. Jake kept making little comments about city people and how they didn't understand real work. Rachel handled it so well, though. She tried talking to Sarah about the kids, offered to help in the kitchen, even asked Dad about his car repair work, but they weren't having it. Things got really bad when Sarah noticed Rachel's ring. I forgot to mention I'd proposed the week before. Nothing fancy, just a simple white gold band with a small diamond. Rachel didn't want anything flashy because she works with her hands. But when Sarah saw it, she flipped out. In the middle of dinner, she said, "Well, guess we know why he won't help family anymore. He's got himself a gold digger. Bet she has expensive taste, huh? That's where all the money's going now?" Rachel stayed calm, though her hands were shaking. My mom just stared at her plate, and Jake laughed as if it was a funny joke. Dad looked at me and said, "Guess you've really forgotten where you came from." I tried to explain that I was still helping them. I'd even paid their electric bill that month. But Sarah started crying about how I'd changed and how Rachel was taking me away from the family. We left early. Rachel cried in the car, not because of what they said about her, but because she felt bad for causing problems between me and my family. That made me feel worse than anything they said. After that, things got really weird. Sarah started posting vague rants on Facebook about fake people and family traitors. Jake started telling everyone I was too good for the family now. Every time I helped them with money, which was still often, they somehow twisted it into me showing off. The crazy part was, I was still co-signing their loans, still helping with bills, still fixing their computers, and doing their taxes. But because I had Rachel now, because I wasn't focused 100% of my time and money on them, I became this terrible person. Rachel suggested family counseling once, and Sarah posted a whole rant on Facebook about rich people thinking therapy could fix everything. We weren't even rich. Both of us worked full-time and lived in a regular apartment. But in their eyes, having enough money to not struggle every month meant we were basically millionaires. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. They'd ask about my work schedule like it was casual conversation. They started showing interest in when Rachel and I were traveling, like they were planning their own vacations around it. They asked questions about my bank details while I helped them with paperwork, brushing it off as just curiosity. You don't want to believe your own family would do something shady, but then, out of nowhere, in March, Dad was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctor gave him 6 months. He pushed through for 7. During that time, Jake and Sarah were oddly focused on Dad's stuff. They'd be in the garage, organizing his tools or asking him about his savings account and life insurance. I was paying for a lot of the medical bills, though insurance covered some. There were still extra costs, special medications, equipment for the house, gas money for hospital trips. I never said no when they needed money for Dad's care. I didn't even keep track of how much I was sending. Sarah started a GoFundMe for Dad's medical expenses and raised about $155,000 from family, friends, church people, and Dad's old customers. I found out later they used that money to renovate their kitchen. They said Dad would have wanted the family to be comfortable, but who does that? Dad got worse quickly. By October, he was in hospice. Jake and Sarah kept talking about the inheritance, like Dad wasn't even there. We should get the garage ready to sell. Those tools are worth good money, they'd say. Dad could hear them. He'd close his eyes and pretend to be sleeping. He passed away shortly after. Losing your father is the worst feeling ever. When December came around, Mom insisted we all come for Christmas. It was our first one without Dad. Rachel was nervous about going. Things had been tense with my family since we got engaged, but I thought maybe Dad's death would bring everyone closer, help them realize what really mattered. We arrived exactly at 2 p.m. when Mom told us to come. We brought presents for everyone, even though money was tight after the medical bills. Rachel made her famous apple pie from scratch. But as soon as we walked in, you could feel something was wrong. Everyone stopped talking and exchanged these unbothered looks. Sarah was sitting there with a strange smile. Jake wouldn't even look at me. The only one who welcomed us was my nephew Tommy, Jake's oldest, 12 years old, and super bright. He was trying to show me this coding project. He had been excitedly talking about the project he was working on at school, mentioning a competition he was eager about. "Uncle Dom, look what I made. It's like what you do," he said. But Jake grabbed his shoulder and pulled him back, saying, "Don't bother your uncle with that computer stuff. He's probably too busy being important." Tommy's excitement faded, and he walked off to play his games in the corner, while Jake gave me a look that made it seem like even talking to me was some kind of betrayal. That should have been my first hint about what was coming. Mom gave me a hug, but it felt forced, and she hardly acknowledged Rachel. She just took the pie and disappeared into the kitchen. We sat in the living room, and there was complete silence for several minutes. Finally, Jake cleared his throat dramatically and said, "We need to talk about some family matters." Rachel politely started to get up, probably thinking she should leave us alone, but Sarah interrupted with a fake sweet tone, saying, "Oh no, please stay, Rachel. You should hear this, since you're so interested in our family's finances." The way she said it made my skin crawl. I asked, "What's going on?" But I already had a sinking feeling. Jake leaned in, trying to look serious, and said, "While Dad was sick, we had to make some decisions for the family." "What decisions?" I asked. Sarah jumped in again, still using that sugary tone, saying, "Your brother did what needed to be done. We gave him power of attorney, so everything is in his name now. The house, the garage, Dad's savings." She paused, watching my face. "Everything." I felt like I couldn't breathe. "Oh my, what do you mean, everything?" I asked. Jake responded without even looking at me. "It's all been transferred. It's done." I sat there, trying to process what I was hearing. The inheritance Dad had specifically left for me, gone. I started to protest. "You can't just—" But Sarah interrupted, dropping the sweet act. "We already did. And it's perfectly legal. Family comes first, and you don't need that money anyway." I just sat there, stunned, as they tried to explain. Sarah continued, speaking slowly, as if to a child. "We have a family to support, bills to pay. Your father understood that family comes first, not like you would understand, living your selfish single life. I pointed out that I wasn't single. I was engaged to Rachel, which was a mistake." Sarah shot Rachel a look full of hate, saying, "Oh, the gold digger found herself a guy with a good job, didn't she? Probably convinced him to abandon his family. Bet you're loving all that tech money." Rachel started to defend herself, But Jake cut her off, saying, "We know your type. Coming from nothing, thinking you're better than us because you've got some education. Both of you have forgotten where you came from." Mom just sat there, staring at her hands. I asked her if she knew about this, and she nodded. "They needed it more than you. You have your job, your money. They have kids to think about." I reminded them about all the money I'd sent over the years, the medical bills, the times I helped with the mortgage. Sarah actually laughed, saying, "Oh, please, you think throwing us some spare change makes you a hero? We deserve that money. We're real family, not some stuck-up computer guy who thinks he's too good for us." That's when they started attacking Rachel again, accusing her of cheating on me, saying she just wanted my money, and that she looked down on them for being simple, working people. Rachel sat there, taking it, but I could see her hands shaking. I stood up to leave, and Sarah started fake crying, saying I was abandoning the family at Christmas. Jake called me ungrateful. Mom finally spoke up again, saying, "If you leave now, don't bother coming back." We left in the car, and Rachel broke down. As usual, feeling guilty, as if she had somehow caused the rift between me and my family. I had to pull over because I was so angry I couldn't focus. Once I got home, I started going through everything. My bank accounts, Dad's accounts, the property records. They had planned this for months, using Dad's illness as a cover to transfer everything. They even took out loans in my name. My phone kept buzzing with texts, Jake telling me to man up and accept it, Sarah sending long messages about how I was destroying the family, and Mom sending sad face emojis. Real mature, especially for people in their 30s. But they didn't know they were messing with the wrong person. I might work with computers, but I know how to keep track of everything. Every loan, every bill I paid, every time they asked for money. It was time to show them what real family looked like. So I called my bank. It turns out when you report identity theft, they take it pretty seriously. I spent 6 hours on hold, getting passed from one department to another, explaining the nightmare over and over. The bank finally asked if I wanted to press charges, and I told them I needed to check everything first. I wasn't going to rush into this. Jake and Sarah needed to think they had won before I made my move. I played along, not blocking their numbers, not reacting to their social media posts. I even responded to Mom's guilt trip texts with vague, non-committal answers, acting like I was considering making peace. Meanwhile, I was digging through every email, bank statement, and transaction they thought they'd buried. That's when I saw the full extent of what they'd done. They had been opening credit cards in my name for months, convincing the bank they were helping me organize my finances. Rachel was the first to notice the strange charges, small at first, a few hundred here, 1,000 there. But then they got bigger. New appliances, furniture, even a Disney World vacation, all while they played the victims. But the house, that was the real mess. Since I had co-signed for them, they used my name to take out more loans. Much more. The house was worth maybe $180,000, but somehow they had over $250,000 in loans against it. My name was on most of them because I had good credit. When I checked with the mortgage company, I found out they hadn't made a real payment in almost a year. They'd been using my inheritance money to cover the minimums while taking out even more debt, like a twisted pyramid scheme. Then I remembered something. When I co-signed, we included a default clause. If they missed too many payments, I could legally take over the property. To protect myself. Safe to say Jake and Sarah never read the fine print. They just signed where they were told. While I was piecing all of this together, the texts kept coming. Sarah sending long, guilt-ridden messages about family loyalty and how I was betraying them. Jake warning me I'd regret it if I caused problems, and Mom acting disappointed like I was the villain for wanting my stolen money back. Then Rachel found their social media posts. Sarah had written this long, dramatic post about how money had changed me and how I had forgotten my roots. Meanwhile, her profile picture showed her flexing with a $500 purse, one she had bought with a credit card in my name. That's when I went full forensic accountant. I compiled everything, every forged signature, every fake loan application, every stolen dollar. I put it all in a folder labeled Family Business. Rachel said the name was petty, but she wasn't wrong. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. They hadn't just stolen my inheritance, they had used it as collateral for even more loans. They took out second and third mortgages, opened store credit cards, and even tried to get a car loan. That one got denied. Probably the only reason I hadn't been buried in even more debt. And the lies they told everyone. Different stories at church, bragging about promotions to their friends, claiming some long-lost uncle had left them money for their kids' school. They played the role of successful business owners, but every bit of it was built on money they stole from me. Rachel's dad, a retired accountant, took one look at my folder and shook his head. "They don't know what they've started," he said. He helped me put together a plan, not for revenge. Revenge is emotional. This had to be precise. I still didn't go straight to the cops. That would have been too easy. They needed to feel safe first, think they were untouchable. So, I let them. I kept responding to Mom's texts like I was considering making peace, but behind the scenes, I was tearing their world apart. Then I waited. Let them take out one last payday loan in my name, right before I handed everything to my lawyer. That loan was the one that pushed them over the edge. The second the bank saw the fraud claims, the forged documents, and the flagged transactions, everything froze. Jake and Sarah probably didn't notice at first. They were too busy celebrating their latest scam. But just before everything hit the fan, they took out one last payday loan in my name. It was reckless, even for them, but they must have thought they had more time. They didn't. The moment that loan processed, it triggered extra fraud alerts, and that was the final straw for the bank. The second they tried to withdraw the money, everything shut down at once. That was the best part, not just taking back what was mine, but making sure they never saw it coming. When Jake and Sarah found out I was disputing all the credit cards and loans, they lost it, completely lost it. My phone started blowing up with texts and calls from them, their friends, even random family members I hadn't talked to in years. Sarah went on a crazy Facebook rant about how I was trying to destroy their family, posting pictures of her kids and talking about how their evil uncle wanted them to be homeless. She started telling everyone I was jealous of their success. Success built with my stolen money, though she left that part out. Jake took it to another level, showing up at my work, just standing in the parking lot, watching, real creepy stuff. My coworkers started noticing and asking if I was okay. I had to explain to my boss why my brother was lurking around the building. Super embarrassing. Then they started telling people I was on drugs. That's why I was acting crazy, and that Rachel was controlling me, turning me against the family. Some people actually believed them. I got messages from old family friends telling me to get help and remember where I came from. I came from Mom, who had a unique way of dealing with things. She started sharing old family pictures, writing lengthy posts about how money changes people, expressing her sadness about how her son had turned against his own family. When I tried to show her evidence of what they had done, the forged signatures, the stolen money, she refused to even look at it. Instead, she kept saying, "But they have children," as if that justified stealing. The bank was beginning to take action against their house, with all those loans they had taken out now coming due. And surprised they couldn't pay them off. At around 3 a.m., Sarah bombarded my phone with messages, calling Rachel every name in the book. "You turned him against us," she yelled in one voicemail. "You gold digger, you won't get away with this." As if Rachel had anything to do with them not being able to repay their debts. Sarah even showed up at Rachel's work, screaming in the parking lot about how Rachel had taken her brother and ruined their family's security. The security had to escort her out, and Rachel was so shaken that she couldn't drive home. But what made me truly angry was their nerve to break into our house in the middle of the day while we were at work. They used the spare key Mom had given them, saying they needed to retrieve something important. Yes, she just handed it over, trusting them. They destroyed the place. Not like typical thieves looking for valuables, but more like a personal attack. They tore up photos, broke picture frames, poured bleach on Rachel's clothes, even took her work laptop and dumped it in the bathtub. They left a note on the kitchen counter. "Now you know what it feels like to lose everything." I called the police and filed a report. We had to change the locks and install security cameras. Rachel was too scared to stay home alone, so she started working from home, not trusting that they wouldn't show up at her office again. Their friends joined in on the harassment, calling at all hours and sending hateful messages. One of Sarah's church friends drove by our house, yelling about family loyalty, as if they had any clue what was really going on. I received a long email from Jake, trying to justify their actions, claiming I had abandoned the family and looked down on them for not being as successful as me. He said I deserved to lose my inheritance because I didn't value family values. Rich coming from someone who stole from his own brother. Rachel wanted to move away, just to escape it all, but I wasn't about to let them win. They had already taken my inheritance, my relationship with Mom, and my sense of family. I wasn't going to let them take my home, too. I called my lawyer, showed him all the evidence, the break-in, the social media posts, the threats. He looked at everything and said, "They've given you everything you need." It turned out that all their erratic behavior made the legal process easier. That's when I stopped being nice. My lawyer didn't waste time. He looked at all the evidence I'd gathered and filed for emergency court orders the next day. Fraud charges, identity theft, breaking and entering, the whole 9 yards. We even got a restraining order against Jake and Sarah after I showed the judge pictures of them lurking around my work. Court day was a disaster for them. It didn't drag on like I had expected. The judge took one look at the evidence and shut everything down. Sarah's crying act and their poor struggling family story didn't work. Mom sat there in shock the whole time, especially when she saw the forged documents. I think that's when she finally realized what they had really done. The judge ruled that they had to pay everything back, froze their accounts, and ordered wage garnishment. I was also granted the right to buy the house since I was the co-signer. Sarah lost it, screaming about her kids. Jake started yelling across the courtroom, claiming I had always looked down on them. "You think you're so much better than us with your fancy tech job, acting superior because you got out of the neighborhood?" He was red in the face, pointing at me. "You're still that poor kid who shared my mattress. You're no better than me." Normally, I stay quiet, but something in me snapped. "You're right, Jake. I am better than you, not because of my job or money, but because I didn't steal from my own brother. I actually worked for what I have, instead of taking from others. So, yeah, I am better than you." That's when he tried to jump over the barrier to get to me. Security had to drag him out while he continued to scream threats. He looked like a tough guy until the bailiff showed up. Even his lawyer looked embarrassed, probably realizing that their struggling family narrative was falling apart. That was the last time I saw Jake in person, and honestly, good riddance. It's been 3 months since the court hearing, and life is different now, strangely different. Rachel and I moved to a new place across town, changed our phone numbers, emails, everything. We put cameras up all over the house because we still don't feel entirely safe. As for the house Jake and Sarah lived in, I bought it at the foreclosure auction. It needs a lot of work after they trashed it trying to get back at me. I didn't buy it because I wanted it. I bought it because I knew they had planned for Sarah's parents to buy it so they could keep living there. The look on their faces when my bid won almost made all the drama worth it. Now, I'm renting it out. I fixed it up, made it nice, and included in the lease agreement that Jake and Sarah can never live there. Sarah is still posting about me online, and her story changes depending on who she's talking to. Some days I'm the evil rich guy who ruined their lives. Other days I'm the manipulated puppet, and Rachel's the real villain. Last week she was telling people that I'm part of some conspiracy involving banks and the government, getting very creative with her lies. Jake lost his mechanic job after everything came out in court. Turns out his boss didn't like having someone convicted of fraud working on customer cars. Now he's working in a warehouse, telling anyone who will listen that I ruined his career, like I made him steal hundreds of thousands of dollars. The only part that truly saddens me is that their kids won't talk to me anymore. Sarah and Jake told them I'm the reason they had to leave their house, change schools, and give up their things. Can you imagine telling your kids their uncle is evil just because he stopped them from stealing from him? Mom's trying to play both sides now. She calls me sometimes, crying about how the family is broken, saying she wants everyone to get along again, and then posts on Facebook, praying for Jake and Sarah's recovery from financial hardship, like they're the victims here. I stopped answering her calls. On the other hand, Rachel's family has been incredible through all of this. Her parents have us over for dinner every Sunday. Her dad helped me set up the security cameras and handled the legal stuff, and her mom keeps trying to teach me their family recipes. She says I'm the son they never had, and honestly, it's been really nice. But sometimes it makes me miss what I thought I had with my own family. I got promoted at work last month. Turns out, when you're not constantly dealing with family drama and giving away money, you can focus on your career. Rachel and I are planning our wedding for next spring, just a small ceremony, only her family and our closest friends. No drama, no guilt trips, and definitely no Sarah crying about how we're excluding family. Some people at work found out about everything, because Sarah posted about it everywhere. They asked if I feel bad about ruining my brother's life. I told them that Jake and Sarah ruined their own lives. I just made them face the consequences. The money is mostly gone, even with the wage garnishment and selling everything they bought. I'll probably never see most of what they stole, but honestly, I don't care about the money anymore. What bothers me is how easy it was for them to throw away our entire relationship because of greed. The funny thing is, if they had just asked for help instead of stealing, I probably would have helped them. Not with everything they wanted, but enough to get by. That's what real family does. But they didn't want help. They wanted everything I had out of jealousy. I got a letter from Jake last week. It just said, "You came from nothing, and that's all you'll ever be." It made me laugh. Yeah, I came from nothing, worked my way up from nothing. And when they tried to take everything from me, I rebuilt from nothing again. That's the difference between us. I know how to build things. They only know how to take. The other night, Rachel brought it up again. "You should let it go," she said, leaning against me on the couch. "They're not worth the space they take up in your head." I thought about it for a moment, then smirked. "Oh, I let it go. I just don't forget. Because that's the thing. Maybe I'll stay. Maybe I'll go. But wherever I end up, I built it, and I'll never let anyone take that from me again. Thank you all for reading. A lot of people have been asking, Tommy did win that coding competition at his school. I found out through his teacher, who follows me on LinkedIn. You better believe I anonymously paid for him to attend coding camp this summer. The house is rented to a really nice young family now. They're actually fixing it up better than Jake and Sarah ever did. For everyone saying family is family and that I should forgive them, would you forgive someone who stole $400,000 from you and tried to destroy your life just because you share DNA? Yeah, didn't think so.